And so many in the Black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted.
What happens when a guest sits across from Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin on The View and refuses to play by their rules? When someone challenges the very foundation of the arguments they cling to, live on air, with the cameras rolling, you get an explosive moment of television, one where the carefully crafted narrative of the hosts completely unravels, and the audience witnesses something that leaves the panel flustered, defensive, and scrambling. That's exactly what happened when author Coleman Hughes walked onto the set, sat in that chair, and calmly dismantled everything they tried to throw at him. What followed was one of the most tense, revealing exchanges The View has seen in years. From the very start, the clash was clear. Sunny Hostin looked him straight in the eye and accused him of being a pawn, a charlatan, someone used by the right to advance an agenda. Imagine being invited onto a show only to have the hosts immediately question your integrity instead of your ideas. That was the reality Hughes faced. But rather than fold or lash out, he stayed steady, choosing to argue with reason rather than emotion. And that balance, logic versus theatrics, would define the entire segment. The subject that sparked all of this? His book on colorblindness. Now, on paper, you might think a discussion about treating people as equals, without regard to race, would be a unifying concept. But to the hosts of The View, it was practically blasphemy. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin jumped on him from the start, visibly agitated that anyone could dare suggest we look past race and focus on character, opportunity, and class instead.
Question that I should ask you to do is explain to folks what you mean by this. Arguments for a colorblind America. What do you mean when you say that?
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We all see race, right? And we're all capable of being racially biased, so we should all be self-aware to that possibility. My argument is not for that. My argument is that we should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy. Of course. And the reason I wrote this book, thank you.
Hughes calmly laid out his view. Colorblindness doesn't mean pretending race doesn't exist. Of course we all see race. Of course bias can exist. But the ideal is to treat people without regard to skin color, both in daily life and in public policy. That, he argued, is the truest way forward. He explained that in recent years, the opposite philosophy has gained traction, the belief that race is everything, that a person's skin color should define how we see them, how we teach children, and how we craft laws. To Hughes, that's not fighting racism, it's entrenching it. And that, he said, is why he wrote his book. But the pushback came fast. Whoopi interrupted to say that when she was younger, Black history wasn't taught at all in schools. To her, the absence of race was erasure, not unity.
The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything, right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism, and that's why I wrote this book at this time.
I'm sorry, baby. Can I just point out that there is a reason for that? You know, when I went to school, getting any information about anyone's race was not taught. No history, there was no Black history, none of those things were taught.
Hughes didn't dismiss her. Personal experience, he acknowledged it as valid, but he made an important counterpoint. Labeling parts of history as Black history, or giving separate months and anthems, he said, doesn't unify, it divides. When history is simply American history, it includes everyone without creating separate categories. His point wasn't to erase.
There has been such a pointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a Black person, there are a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you. Trying to equal the playing field. I think that's what a lot of folks have been trying to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
I think that's your experience, and that's valid. You know, as a counterpoint, when I was in 5th grade, we all watched Roots together in public school.
Yeah.
So these are different experiences. I think it's also different generations. It's different parts of the country, right? We have very different cultures all living together in one country. So I'm not going to deny that. But I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society, which is to say it's an ideal, it's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there. We're not going to touch it. But we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco. You know, with you didn't hear about the story?
No, but wait.
Then came the discussion of policy. Hughes argued that instead of race-based programs, society should look at socioeconomic class as the clearest indicator of disadvantage. If you want to help those struggling, you don't assume someone needs help just because they're Black or Hispanic. That, he said, is itself racist. It's a modern version of the white savior complex.
You believe that public policies that address socioeconomic differences would be better at benefiting disadvantaged groups, and that race-based policies often hurt the very people they're trying to help. What are some examples of policies that would be better at reducing racial disparities?
So my overall argument is that class, socioeconomics, is a better proxy for disadvantage. We all want to help the disadvantaged, and the question is, how do we identify them, right? The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use, Black and Hispanic identity.
The more accurate way to identify who needs support is to look at income and opportunity. Poor families exist across all races. Class tells you the truth. Race doesn't.
You actually get a better picture of who needs help by looking at socioeconomics and income. That picks out people in a more accurate way.
Sunny Hostin jumped on this. She pointed to statistics, the disparities in wealth between white households and minority households. She insisted ignoring race in that conversation was fundamentally flawed. But Hughes didn't deny the disparities existed.
Not my question, but when you say that socioeconomics picks out people in a better way than race, when you do look at the socioeconomics, you see the huge disparity between white households and Black households. You see the huge disparity between white households and Hispanic households. So your argument, and I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance, your argument that race has no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed in my opinion.
Well, there's two separate questions. One is whether each racial group is socioeconomically the same. That I agree with you. They're not.
Yeah, they're not, and the stats show that.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that fully. The question is, how do you address that in a way that actually targets poverty the best?
He agreed, yes, average household wealth differs. The question, he stressed, is how to address it. If you focus on poverty as a whole, you still disproportionately help minorities because of the way the numbers fall, but you also help poor whites. And that, in his view, is the fairest, least divisive way. Notice how Hostin's tone shifted at this point. She brought up Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., trying to frame Hughes as misunderstanding King's true vision.
What Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged. And he said, yes, we should address racial inequality, yes, we should address the legacy of slavery, but the way to do that is on the basis of class. And that will disproportionately target Blacks and Hispanics because they're disproportionately poor, but it will be doing so in a way that also helps the white poor, in a way that addresses poverty as the thing to be addressed.
That part is true, but as you are a student of Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice, right? So I'm going to get to my question.
Go ahead, go right ahead.
I think the premise is fundamentally flawed. You claim that colorblindness was the goal.
She argued King wanted race to remain central, pointing to his later writings about reparations. And then came the moment that shocked viewers. She looked Hughes in the eye and accused him of being used, manipulated, a charlatan. To level such a personal insult on live television, in front of millions, it was a revealing moment.
Based upon Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, content of character versus the color of skin. Bernice, Dr. King's daughter, points out that 4 years after giving that speech, actually, Dr. King also said this: a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for Negroes. He also said in 1968, it was about less than a week before he was assassinated, this country never stops to realize that they owe a people kept in slavery for 244 years. So rather than class, he did write about that earlier on. Right before his death, he made the argument for racial equality and racial reparations. And so your argument for colorblindness, I think, is something that the right has co-opted. And so many in the Black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
Even Joy Behar looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting in her seat as if the line had been crossed.
So how do you...
You've never voted for
Republican. You said that you're a conservative. No, you did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
I said I was a conservative.
Yes.
And yet, Hughes didn't flinch. He reminded her that the very quote she cited from King came from the same book where King also advocated for a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged, a class-based approach that targeted poverty as a whole. Yes, it would still help Black and Hispanic families disproportionately because of economic realities, but it would do so in a way that didn't divide people by skin color. He challenged Hostin directly. Read the book, read the full context.
But my question to you is, how do you respond to those critics.
Okay, let's give it
First thing I think it's very important. The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro, that's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was,
Yes.
and it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based policy.
But he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were.
Then came the defense. Almost suddenly, the other hosts, even Behar, seemed to sense Hostin had gone too far. They tried to soften the exchange, to steer it back toward questions rather than character attacks. But the damage was already done. Hughes had held his ground, and the audience could feel it. And that's when Hughes dropped another observation, one that might sting even more.
I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence.
I want to give you the opportunity to respond to
I appreciate
the criticism.
I appreciate it. There's no evidence that I've been co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
He pointed out that racial tensions had actually been improving for decades, right up until around 2013. Surveys from that time showed majorities of Black, Hispanic, and white Americans agreed race relations were good.
So in the past decade, it feels like racial tensions have gotten worse. Do you see it that way, and what do you attribute it to?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at all the data, it finds that race relations were getting better until about 2013. That year, you had majority of Black, Hispanic, and white Americans saying race relations were good, and then you just see it nosedive. And 2013, people like to blame, Republicans like to blame Obama. It wasn't his fault. Democrats like to blame Trump.
Then, suddenly, things plummeted. What happened? Social media, Hughes argued. Smartphones, viral clips, algorithms pushing outrage, these created the illusion that racism was surging, even as long-term trends showed it was declining. He wasn't letting either political side off the hook. He wasn't blaming Obama or Trump or foreign actors. He was saying this was a homegrown problem, amplified by technology.
It was actually just technology. We all got social media and smartphones, and we had videos being promoted in the algorithm that were unrepresentative, and it created this impression that racism was on the rise when in fact it had been on the decline for decades.
And it allowed that at all to foreign actors getting involved in technology?
Yes, Russia tries to meddle, absolutely, but I don't think we can blame foreign actors. This is a homegrown problem.
The hosts didn't like that answer either. They tried to push him on his comparisons, especially his critique of the anti-racism movement popularized by writers like Robin DiAngelo and Ibram Kendi. How could he compare anti-racism to white supremacy?
I have a question, because you write that the anti-racism movement, there are a couple of people, I don't even know who they are, maybe
Robin DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo,
Yeah.
Ibram Kendi, for instance.
Okay, well, you say that is just another form of racism, and you even say it has a lot in common with white supremacy. How can you compare those two things?
But Hughes explained it simply. Both place race at the center of identity. White supremacists judge you by skin color, and so do these so-called anti-racist thinkers, only with different stereotypes. One says to be white is to be superior. The other says to be white is to be ignorant. Both are wrong, both are reductive, and both teach children to see race first rather than character.
So by anti-racism, you're comparing it to white supremacy.
Because they both view your race as an extremely significant part of who you are. So white supremacists, they obviously say, we all know what they say, okay? Neo-racists like Rob DiAngelo, they say that to be white is to be ignorant, for example. Well, this is a racial stereotype, and I want to call a spade and say this is not the style of anti-racism we have to be teaching our kids. We should be teaching them that your race is not a significant feature of who you are. Who you are is your character, your value, and your skin color doesn't say anything.
At that point, the audience erupted in applause. Common sense resonates, even when it makes the panel uncomfortable. It wasn't just Coleman Hughes shutting down the hosts of The View. It was the rare sight of truth standing firm against spin, and of an audience recognizing the difference. So what do you think? Was Hughes right to push back against the idea that race should dominate how we view history, policy, and identity? Was Sunny Hostin out of line to label him a charlatan on live television? And what does it say that the studio audience sided with him instead of the hosts they came to see? This moment wasn't just another heated exchange. It was a turning point in the conversation. And it left Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny scrambling in ways they did not expect.